All right, all right. Happy New Day, everybody. Happy New Day, world. I'm Sabrina J. Lewis, coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. We are getting ready to get into this book reading. As you know, we have been reading Humble Consulting. I hope you all have had a wonderful weekend. We've been reading Humble Consulting by Mr. Edgar, Schein, and we're talking about how to provide real help faster. We are still in chapter 3, which is talking about the need for a trusting and open level 2 relationship. We left off preparing to talk about the adventures of Digital Equipment Corporation. And so let's see how much we can get into today on this happy Giving Tuesday. It's Tuesday, y'all. It's Tuesday, February 7th, 2003. I can't believe it's Tuesday already. Wait a minute. Let me see if I can make my screen a bit brighter because it seems really dark. There we go. Nice. There we go. Yes, that is much better. Let me see if I can do it again over here on Facebook. At night, I turn my camera low so that when I need to use it, it's not so bright. There we go. That is so much better. Yes. And let me as well do it on my laptop. Okay. Let me hurry up for those who will watch the replay. We're on page 47, talking about a case study 3. So I like case studies because case studies help you in real life. Case studies gives you the what happened and it gives you the lesson of it, and then different interventions and breakthroughs as to help you move forward with references as well on how you can be better and do better. All right, let's go. So this is a case study again about the adventures of Digital Equipment Corporation. My relationship with Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, began in the mid-1960s and continued into the mid-1990s. My many helping adventures with DEC provided an enormous amount of learning throughout the years and culminated in a book about growth and death of this organization. My early interventions provided me, without realizing it at the time, crucial learning opportunities that led to the concept of process consultation and laid the foundations for humble consulting. The initial meeting and the proposition, my relationship with DEC resulted from having a level 2 relationship with Win Hindle, whom I had gotten to know when he was in the industrial liaison office at MIT in the late 1950s. He was recruited by Ken Olson, DEC's co-founder, to be Ken's executive assistant, and in a capacity, he called me one day to find out if I was interested in doing some work for the DEC. Or with them, actually, not for them, but with them. Again, he's coming on as a consultant. Okay. He says, I said I was, which resulted in the meeting with Ken to test our chemistries. When I went to meet him at his office, I found a decidedly informal man surrounded by computer, memorabilia, and outdoor gear. He seemed to want to discuss mostly his canoeing and various other outdoor activities, and managed to convey to me that the reason he was willing to have come in as a consultant was very much related to his general faith in MIT and its faculty. His proposition was that I attend the regular Friday afternoon operations committee meetings to see if I could help with the communications and making the group work well. He did not say that there were any problems, but explained we are a bunch of engineers, so it might help or it might be useful to have a social psychologist around us to help. Okay, so wait, let me go back. Because remember, I'm reading for me, but I also have to read so that I can understand what I'm reading. So I'm not just trying to sit here and just read the book. I want to make sure that as I'm reading, I'm understanding what I'm reading, right? So he says his proposition was that I attend the regular Friday afternoons committee meetings to see if I could help with communications and making the group work well. Okay, this is where I use my highlighter and my pen so that I can take notes, so I can understand. Okay, what does the man want? Like, what is he asking you to do? Okay, so this is this pen's not working. Okay, so this is his proposition. This is what he's asking him to do. He said then that he did not say that there were any problems, but he explained we are a bunch of engineers. Okay, so that could be a particular problem, right? We're a bunch of engineers, so it might be useful to have a social psychologist around to help us. You should just understand, or you should just attend and see if you can help. I had very little opportunity to say anything or to ask questions in this opening exploration because Ken seemed to have it all figured out and made it clear that he did not expect any comments from me. He told me that his secretary would give me all the details of time and location and dismiss me. At this point, again, we're talking about a case study dealing with the need for trusting open level 2 relationships in humble consulting. He told me that his secretary would give me the details of time and location, and then he dismissed me. At this point, we were still in a level 1 relationship, and I had no idea what I would find and where it would be, or where it would be led. What a gift to a young professor consultant to be asked just to observe and see if you could help. The headquarters in Maynard, Massachusetts was just a half hour away from Cambridge, which made attending the Friday meetings extremely easy. My confidence in accepting this assignment was fed by my having had several summers of experience as a staff member in the human relations labs were conducted each summer at Bethel, Maine. These labs were built around Kurt Lewis's theories, and they launched in the 1950s, what has come to be taken for granted as experiential education. The key learning took place in the T groups, training groups, where participants and staff members together created an environment for learning about groups and leadership. That was Schein and Venice. I hope y'all have your books because, you know, I want y'all to be able to go back and have something to reference as you are reading with me. We're on page 49. We're going to talk about the early intervention of the group. So, my Bethel experience, I thought I knew what a good group should look like, and unconsciously was still locked into my role as a scientist who could analyze, make suggestions, and thereby improve things. Ken introduced me to the group with the same broad mandate and said I would most likely just observe to see how the group worked and try to be helpful. I think I was accepted by the group to some degree at level 1 because Ken was in effect vouching for me, taking on the mantle of group doctor and launching into listening politely to learn as much as I could from observing the group's behavior became easy and natural. I noticed after 1 or 2 meetings in which I said nothing, the group worked from a written agenda that they did not finish, and they were frustrated not to finish because important items had not been discussed before they ran out. At the 3rd meeting, I saw the same tension building up, so I decided to ask a humble inquiry question. Excuse me, could I ask a question? Where did this agenda come from? Group members looked at each other with puzzled expressions. Ken, I have my administrative secretary prepare it. More confused looks. Ken, let's bring her in and let's find out how she prepares it. Ken's assistant is boarded. Ken, hi Marge, we were wondering how you prepare our weekly agenda. Marge, well, it is just the items that each of you on the operations committee tell me that you need to discuss this week. I put them down in the order in which they are called in, and you get that list or as your agenda. Is that okay? Do you want me to do something different? Nobody spoke up immediately, but there was an aura in the room of recognizing that this way of creating an agenda made no sense. Ken then took charge. Ken, no, Marge, that is perfectly fine. Continue to do it that way. Thanks. When Marge was gone, Ken continued. We obviously have items of different urgency. So starting next week, when we first get in the list, so starting next week, when we get the first list from Marge, let's take 5 minutes in identifying what firing items that must be done. There was a lot of head nodding and sigh of satisfaction and relief that they might in the future meetings feel less frustrated. Needless to say, I was extremely proud of having helped the group with my innocent ignorance, but I did not appreciate it until many years later that this was a perfect case of process help. Okay, wait, let me underline that. Process help. Process help. That is using one's ignorance strategically and tactically by identifying an issue that may or may not be a problem and timing the question carefully to a moment when the group can observe the phenomenon for itself and make its own judgment about what to do differently. Okay, got it. And he calls that process help. A week or two passed, and the group did get through a lot of their firefighting items. But important policy questions now kept getting shoved further and further into the future, leading me to wonder how they might ever get to some of those big questions. I decided to raise the issue as a provocative question, a thoroughly different kind of intervention. So this is Ed S. Remember, this is the case study. So this is Ed S. I noticed that some of the important policy items keep getting delayed. Should you have more than one kind of meeting where at some meetings you take up the policy questions first? This was a jump to a more suggestive inquiry. Let's underline that or highlight that, rather, which seemed appropriate since the group was exceptionally efficient, oriented, and could hear what amounted to a new process suggestion. Now, this is a question of a group member. Why don't we start doing that on alternate Fridays? I had observed that the group got tired at their Friday afternoon meetings, so I wondered to myself if I should bring that up as a reason to not have them just alternate Fridays. I had to choose whether to stay in the inquiry mode or shift to some other form of question, or even make a direct suggestion because I really wanted to challenge their proposed solution. I experienced this moment as shifting further into the doctor role, where I was about to make a diagnosis and maybe even a prescription. This seemed justified to me because it came to running effective meetings. I thought I was more of an expert than the group was. Okay, this is Ed. For your policy meetings, would it not be better to have a longer meeting? A group member said, I agree, so we should start the Friday meetings earlier. Page 52. This did not seem to solve the problem, and I began to think about the possibility that they would get deeper into their issues if they met away from the office. So this is Ed S. Do you really want to discuss important policy issues here at the office on a Friday afternoon? This comment was more provocation and authentically revealed some of my impatience with their failure to see how dysfunctional it would be to spend tired afternoons on a Friday on important matters. So a group member said, no, you're right, Ed. Let's meet away from this office to talk about the important production and product decisions when we are less tired. Ken says, why don't we go up to my cabin in the Maine woods for a weekend? I sensed an immediate positive response to this idea and watched with interest how other group members picked it up, offered cabins of their own, and went into an intense problem-solving mode. They decided within a few minutes to have a periodic all-day meetings away from the office at one of their cabins in the woods. These meetings eventually migrated into quarterly whole weekend retreats. Underline or highlight that. Okay. Because all-day meetings can be a dread. So quarterly whole weekend retreats where most of the important strategic decisions are made, thus permitting the Friday meetings to become more focused on immediate problems that could be addressed in that format. The quarterly retreats were called WID meetings and became a regular part of DEC's government governance structure throughout its history. And that's so cool to me. All right, so now let's talk about the lessons. Hey, YouTube, IG, and Facebook, thank you for being here. So he says, I learned from the earlier intervention around the agenda that the group could solve its own problem quickly once a problem was clearly identified. We got to know what the problem is, y'all. I was therefore not surprised that once the idea of important meetings away from the office was launched, the group would quickly invent a whole new process that I would not have thought of, but that clearly fitted well into their New England outdoor woodsy culture. I had seen in this process how culture is created. This is the second lesson. A group creates a new process, a new structure to solve a particular problem. And if the solution works, it becomes routine and the group forgets when and where the idea came from. Years later, people took wood meetings for granted as the way to solve big problems. The head of engineering, who was a member of the operations committee, liked the idea so much that he instituted such meetings for his engineering heads and called them jungle meetings. Third lesson, I had remembered from the days of facilitating sensitivity training groups how important it was to time interventions carefully to moments when the client group had enough information to be able to see the problem for themselves. The intervention then is just a nudge and a kind of permission to innovate. I noticed that one could get lost. No, wait, let me go back. I noticed that one can get a lot accomplished with diagnostic questions that did not force new ideas into the client's thinking, but put ideas out there for the client to grab the idea, if it made sense. The fourth lesson is the most important lesson was that I could switch roles from just asking humble inquiry questions to being the expert who knew that long Friday afternoon meetings would not lead to effective policy and strategy decisions. And I agree because we used to have morning Friday meetings from like, what time was it? It started at noon. It would be from noon to 1. And sometimes those meetings seemed longer than other ones. I think there was another meeting from 9 to, or 10 to 12. No, I think it was 10 to 12. Okay. He said, once I knew that I had expert knowledge based on my own group experience, it was entirely appropriate and authentic to share that knowledge with the group in the form of a suggestive question on process. Fifth lesson, I also noticed that with each intervention, it's chilly in here. Why is it cold? The window's not open. I'm cold a little bit. um, he says, I also noticed that with each intervention of this sort that helped the group have better meetings, my credibility increased and people stopped me in the hall to chat, leading to my really getting to know each of them individually. We're now all working toward level 2 relationships that later became crucial as problem complexity increased. As I look back on these times, I was edging toward the complex role I am now describing as humble consulting. In retrospect, most of these interventions were what I am calling adaptive moves. Finally, I learned from these early experiences with the DEC group that being around an organization, while it is doing real work, services real problems rapidly. Ken was an intuitive leader who sensed that he did not have to specify for me what problems to look for, but instead just to invite me into the organization to observe and draw my own conclusions about when and how to help. This sometimes worked beautifully, as I described later, and sometimes was difficult, as I describe next. Okay, trying to fix the unruly group. I'm gonna have to close this window because I'm a little chilly, and I don't know why it's so cold. All right. Trying to fix the unruly group. When the Woods meetings became a regular event, I was typically invited to attend them. At one of the early ones, I observed a more extreme version of what I had seen. On the Friday afternoons, constant interruptions of one another's points, high emotions, verbal put downs, and generally unruly behavior that included people reading their emails, wandering off to sit in another part of the room, and in other ways actively showing disinterest in what was being discussed. Ken himself would wander off into a corner and stack Coke cans, or in other ways play around. But of course, he was listening intently and would suddenly enter the conversation with great intensity and a raised voice. When I saw that this was a pattern, I decided to intervene. I observed one member trying to make a point and then being rudely interrupted by another member. So here's Ed. Could I just take a moment, or could I just take a minute to point something out that might be helpful? Jack was trying to make a point, but before he was through, Pete interrupted him to make his own point. That seemed to cut off some information. And I wondered whether you noticed that this happens frequently in the group. Jack, smiling, yeah, I didn't get to say what I wanted. Pete, Ed, you're right. Sorry, Jack. Just felt I had to make my point. But I agree that we should not cut each other off and interrupt so much. Thanks, Ed, for pointing this out. My satisfaction with this intervention was short lived, as in subsequent conversations. It was as if I had never said anything. The interruptions, the emotional behavior, and other unruly things continued as before. I remember trying a couple of more times to point these things out, being thanked each time for being very helpful and producing no change at all. All right, here's lessons in that. I'm gonna get a sweater. I will be right back. Closing the window, didn't I? I'll be back. I think I'll just put on my cape real quick. I don't know why it's so chilly. But it is. I had to go get my cape, y'all. I was like, it's chilly over here a little bit. I gotta be warm. I can't be cold. I don't like being cold. All right, I'm back. We are reading Humble Consulting, How to Provide Real Help Faster. We are on page 56. We're talking about the lessons from an intervention. Let's see how that went. Okay, lesson 1. The main lesson was learned much later. I had been the punishing expert telling the group that it was doing something bad. I had even violated one of the rules. I had learned the insensitivity group facilitation of observing behavior but not judging it. Let the group judge it or consider what the consequences were of interrupting one another. By saying that I saw this often in a group, I was clearly implying that this was undesirable behavior. They were a bad group. In retrospect, this intervention violated most of the principles I had learned about how to help a group learn. Second lesson, as I reflect on this from the point of view of Humble Consulting HC, I realized that I was listening for the group's behavior. Did not wait, what? I realized that I was listening for how the group's behavior did or did not match my or ideal model, and had totally suppressed my curiosity about why the group behaved the way it did. I had failed one of my principles, that of access your ignorance, which means to focus on what you don't know. In this case, why the group was so unruly and emotional. Third point, The big point is that I was still being the doctor and scientist, still working for my own model of what is good group process and not paying enough attention to what was really going on. I had forgotten this that smart people don't do stupid things for no reason. So one must locate why they are doing something that looks stupid from our point of view, but may make sense from their point of view. I learned that groups will do what they will do, and remembered that the good group model I had learned in the human relations labs was designed to facilitate learning. Maybe this group had a different goal for which a different process was required, or possibly this unruly process solved problems for them in some way that I did not yet understand. We're on page 57 talking about the need for trusting open level 2 relationships. So here's his breakthrough intervention. When the unruly behavior continued, I gave up trying to change them and lapsed into just sitting back and watching. In retrospect, that was the moment when I became potentially really helpful because I abandoned my preoccupation with myself and my models of good group behavior. I became caring and curious, key elements of humble consulting attitude. Caring and curious. I had come to like these people, began to feel sorry for them when they cut one another off and were rude, but most important, began to empathize with what they were trying to do. I began to listen to them instead of trying to figure out how to fix them. I'm gonna underline that. I'm gonna underline it, right? Because sometimes we don't listen. We're always trying to fix people, but we don't listen to what they got going on. He says, I will come back to this point later because in all of the advice on how to listen better, I feel we have not differentiated enough the choices we have on what to listen for. Oh, that was good, right? That was good. Because we want to help, right? We want to help people, but we don't listen. We try to fix them. We can't fix people. We have to listen for specific things so that we can listen appropriately or help appropriately. So he said, I decided to listen for what they are trying to do anyway. Like for what they are trying to do. So listening for what they were trying to do made several things clear. They were an extremely young company with some success under their belt, now trying to figure out what new products they should design and how to keep growing. They were one of the very first companies to create interactive computing. Interactive computing, a whole new concept that would ultimately make desktop personal computing routine. But no one at this point had the answer of just how to move forward. They were inventing the future, and each product decision was, in fact, betting the company. No wonder they were intense and emotional, and each fighting for his or her own solution for what to do next and how to do it. They had been hired to do, no, they had been hired to be the best and brightest and the most passionate. I also noticed that I had trouble tracking the various alternatives that were being proposed and debated. So one day, quite without knowing what was motivating me to accept my curiosity to track things better, I went to the flip chart and the following scene took place. Okay, this is Jack. Here's my idea. We take this line of computers and dot, dot, dot. Then Pete interrupting Jack. You just don't understand. We have to dot, dot, dot. I'm now standing at the flip chart with marker in hand, looking directly at Jack and interrupting Pete. This is Ed. Jack, I started to write down your idea but didn't get all of it. What were you proposing? Jack, yeah, what I was trying to say is dot, dot, dot. He then continues with the entire idea while Pete and the whole group just listen and I write the idea down. Pete, I see what you were saying. Now, my point was dot, dot, dot. I start to write it down, and the group listens for all of Pete's point until it was written down. The group then goes on, but lets me write each major point down and continues in this more disciplined process until the major ideas are on the flip chart. The group now talks in terms of which idea they are agreeing with, critiquing, shooting down, or whatever. But the flip chart focuses the discussion towards some kind of consensus. At the end of that meeting, various group members come up to me and say, Ed, what you did today was really helpful. Okay, so here's the lessons and what Ed did. Let me see if we're going to get through this today. Probably not, because there's about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's about 8 to 10 more pages left before we get to chapter 4. So what I'm going to do, the time now is 9:10. I'm going to end it here. That's exactly 30 minutes. I don't want to bore you all anymore. If you're bored, well, maybe this is not for you. But if you want to learn more about humble consulting and how to help grow people faster, these case studies and these lessons actually are helpful. They're helpful in any organization, any corporation, any business. If you're working with people, these lessons are going to help you. Okay, so we're going to resume tomorrow with the lessons from the case study that he just did. Again, we're talking about the need for trusting and open level 2 relationships in humble consulting, how to provide real help faster. All right, this book is by Mr. Edgar Schein. I figured that being here in the mornings will help you throughout your days to consult better, with your colleagues and corporations and organizations and just things that we have to do every day. It's after 9 now. I have to get to work. It's actually 9:11. And I want you all to have a wonderful day. My personal announcements are, you know that I participated in 2 anthologies. One is called Take the Cape Off, Sis. The other is It's Your Time, Sis. If you have not already, we've extended the orders from Monday to Friday. Bulk orders are going to go out. So if you live in New York City and you want to save on shipping, you can send me a direct message and we will place those bulk orders and your books will be in the mail soon. If you live out of town, you can go to my website, sabrinajlewis.com, and get your books. All right. Those are my announcements. I'm also a licensed cosmetologist. If you want your hair did over the weekend, send me a message. As a public health worker, I have direct contracts with assisted living facilities and group homes. So if you want to bring me in as your ambassador of wellness and beauty, you can also send me a message. All right. That's my time, y'all. Love life well and live. Bye for now. See you later. Bye. Thank you for joining, everyone. Bye for now. See you later.